What's up, NBA fans? Hopefully you all had a good July 4th on Thursday, but we have some rumors to talk about here on July 5th because there's a lot surrounding Brandon Ingram, DeMar DeRozan, and more in the NBA. But before we get into that, make sure you are following me over on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff is my handle. I'm going to follow back the first 10 people that follow me from this video. So go give me a shout. I have a lot to talk about in the NBA world on my social media, so go give me a follow. All right, the first person we're going to talk about today is Brandon Ingram, the New Orleans Pelicans forward, who is very likely to be traded. That is the reports out there. This one coming in from Marc Stein, who said, attempts in New Orleans to trade Brandon Ingram have intensified in recent days, league sources say. Sources tell the Stein line that, wait, first of all, timeout. Referencing yourself in the third person is wild. Just putting that out there. That on Ingram's side, with the reality that the contract extension terms in his camp had hoped for are not forthcoming from the Pelicans, there has likewise been exploration of trade options. This has kind of been on the wall, if you will, and it's pretty obvious that his time in New Orleans is flat out done. Like, Brandon Ingram just simply has not had the success to equal the long-term extension, at least in New Orleans' eyes, and they're looking to move forward with a different build. They don't think that B.I., Zion are the duo of the future, which is why they went out there and traded DeJounte Murray. That was a move to replace Brandon Ingram in my eyes, not try to play them alongside each other. Ingram will have suitors out there. The former top 3 pick in the NBA draft when he played for the Lakers has been pretty solid over the past 4 seasons in New Orleans. He obviously was the headlining piece in the Anthony Davis trade between New Orleans and Los Angeles, and he's been a solid scorer, right? The question is, in my eyes, and I think a lot of teams will have to ask themselves this question as well, can he be a top 2 player on a championship winning team? That's the question that will be asked, and if we're going to be honest here, I think Brandon Ingram is a very fine player. I don't think there's a world out there, at least in the current NBA landscape, where he can be a top 2 player on a championship team. Can he be the third? Absolutely. I think he can. But then the issue we face here is that the contract that he wants, you can't pay that to your third guy unless one of the 2 better options or your 1 and 2 options are somehow on a rookie deal. So that's the issue that people are going to have with Brandon Ingram. We're going to continue the conversation on B.I., what teams could be interested, what his contract would look like in a trade and extension. But let me know what team should trade for Brandon Ingram down in the comment section. There are a lot of teams that could use his services. Don't get it twisted. Even though I don't think he could be a top 2 guy, there are teams that will have interest. These are the 4 teams that I think will show the most interest. Well, the Sacramento Kings is the one team that it's pretty much confirmed have inquired about Brandon Ingram. There has been reports out there that the Kings have at least had a conversation. The Cavaliers make a lot of sense to me because you can argue if he was on that team, he wouldn't be their second best player, but he would at least be their second best scorer. And they definitely need that to be the case because Garland and Evan Mobley just aren't there yet. Now, if you did make that move if you're Cleveland, you're hoping that B.I. can be your second best scorer to help Donovan Mitchell out, but Evan Mobley or Garland takes another step to be probably the better overall player. Miami's interested, or intriguing, I should say, because they need to add some scoring help alongside Bam and Jimmy, and they can't run it back. And there was also buzz out there that Houston would like to add a experienced veteran forward to help them push along. They are non-committal, by the way, to Alfred Şengün and Jalen Green, so maybe B.I. is someone that they could be committed to. The tricky part, though, with Brandon Ingram is that money. As I mentioned, are teams going to view him as a player that can be top 2 on a championship contending team because he wants that type of money, and it's not for this upcoming season. He has 1 year left on his current contract for $36.01 million. That is good value for Brandon Ingram. Like, that is what a player of his caliber should probably be getting paid in the NBA. The issue is the extension that he is going to want, and if you are trading for Brandon Ingram, you're going to have to give him, unless you're trading assets for him, for 1 year, which that doesn't make any sense. Brandon Ingram is eligible to sign a 4-year, $208 million extension. Now, assuming that he gets traded, a team would be able to give him that max contract because they have his bird rights. I'm unsure if he was able to play out this year in New Orleans and sign next year in free agency, if he could get that from a different team. But at least if you trade for him, that's the max extension. So is a team going to give him that? I'm not so sure a team is going to be willing to give him $52 million a season. I know if I was GM of a team, I would not be giving him that contract. What I would likely be wanting to do is give him something in the OG Anunoby rate, because even though OG is not as good as an offensive player, his impact on winning basketball might be equal. So a $42, $44 million on annual average basis for Brandon Ingram makes a lot of sense. But 52 a year, yeah, I'm probably out on that. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we are going to have nonstop coverage around the NBA in the offseason, during the regular season. It does not matter. We are the best place to have your NBA news and rumors locked into. So hit that sub button and show us you're a real one. All right, let's move into the second portion of today's show because we have a small update on DeMar DeRozan, the top NBA free agent still available. This one coming in from the Miami Herald's Barry Jackson, who's tapped in and initially had the news on DeMar and Miami having interest in each other. He reported that the Kings have talked to the Bulls about a DeRozan sign and trade, per source, and now the Spurs are also another possibility. Despite DeRozan's interest in Miami, Heat not in position to give him what he's seeking at this time. The Heat will move on and hope a different opportunity arises, blah, 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 blah. But at least for the DeMar DeRozan sweepstakes, we have now 4 teams that have documented interest in the public eye. Miami, Los Angeles, and now, according to Barry Jackson, both the San Antonio Spurs and Sacramento Kings. All 4 teams make a lot of sense for DeRozan as they're all seeking another scorer that can really help them further along. Los Angeles, Miami, and Sacramento trying to compete. San Antonio is just looking for someone to help take the pressure off Victor Wembanyama. But if the Miami Heat are out of the sweepstakes, as you just saw there, they're not willing to make the necessary cap moves to shed salary to sign DeMar DeRozan. Well, could they actually be out of it, and it would leave Sacramento, San Antonio, and Los Angeles as the top 3? Well, Javon Buha a couple days ago reported the Heat are viewed as the favorites. So there are quite a lot of conflicting reports. And then there's more added to the story when Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports said this yesterday on his podcast that DeMar DeRozan, arguably the best piece still on the board, there's definitely been some talk of a potential double sign-and trade of him to Miami and Caleb Martin back to Chicago. I have not gotten that confirmed as a serious thing that's being discussed, but people in the league have definitely talked about it. Well, that would absolutely be fascinating, and it just adds more layers to this story, right? We talk about DeRozan maybe not being a fit for Miami. But then now there's other reports that they're viewed as the favorites. Now there's a sign-and trade being discussed where Caleb Martin would go to Chicago and DeMar would go to Miami. The interesting part about the NBA as a whole right now is that if you are going to do a sign-and trade, you have to make it 3 seasons worth of a contract. Now, they don't all have to be fully guaranteed, like we saw in the Buddy Hield deal yesterday, 2 years, $21 million, with that 3rd year not really guaranteed. So it's really a 2-year deal, but at least on paper, it's a 3-year contract. It's very interesting that you have to do a 3-year deal in a sign-and trade. More on DeRozan here in a second, but let me know what team should sign or trade for DeMar DeRozan. There's only really one team on that list that we talked about that could outright sign him. That would be the Spurs. The other 3 would have to do a trade in some capacity, whether separate deal or a sign and trade. Let me know that team down below. DeRozan is still one of the best players in the NBA, even though he's up there in age. Like, he's still 34, 35, but he can flat out get buckets. He's been a 20-point-per-game scorer each of the last 4 seasons. He's efficient. The issue is that he's not the best 3-point shooter, and that's going to hold him back from being an elite player in the league currently. Like, he's one of the best scorers, but as an overall player, can you trust him to be a top 2 guy on your team? Because in the league, at least we've seen over the past 5 years, you need guys that are able to space the floor. All of the teams that we've talked about so far would love to add DeRozan, right? Bam and Jimmy, those are your top 2 guys in Miami. DeRozan would be a nice 3rd option for them, who could lead them in scoring, but he's not a top 2 player. San Antonio looking for a scoring threat alongside Wembanyama. The Kings looking for a third guy next to De'Aaron Fox, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis. And then you got the Lakers looking to be desperate, making a move, who would be their third guy behind LeBron and AD. The issue is that, as I mentioned, the Kings, Heat, Lakers, they all have to do other moves in order to acquire DeMar DeRozan. The Kings probably could do a sign and trade, but at least with Los Angeles and Miami, they would both have to shed salary, whether it be Hero Rozier in the 305 or D'Angelo Russell, Jared Vanderbilt, Rui Hachimura in Los Angeles. It makes it a lot more tricky to have to do a separate deal like that to shed the salary enough to sign DeRozan. The Spurs are the only team that could flat out sign him. They have about $30 million, I believe, in cap space before they reach the first apron. So they could sign him to a one-year, $20 million deal if they really wanted to. Is that something DeMar wants? I don't know. Does he want to waste a year of his career in San Antonio? Probably be fun playing with Wemby, but he knows there's not a chance to win an NBA title there next year, and he's getting only older. Does he want to do that? Well, we're going to have more around the NBA on the channel, but make sure you are following me on Twitter. As I said off the top, I talk about the NBA on a daily basis. So if you want more NBA talk in between our videos, my Twitter is the best place to do it, so go give me a follow.